general election hasn't formally started yet, but the campaigning has, and it is the smaller parties that are setting the tone. Nigel Farage was today unveiling hundreds of Brexit Party candidates and preparing them, in his own style, for what is to come in the weeks ahead.
I'm guessing that you, our prospective parliamentary candidates, have, over the course of the last week or two, begun to receive a little bit of abuse. Good. I've had 25 years of it.
But behind the bravado, he's under pressure after Conservative Brexiteers, including Jacob Rees-Mogg, accused Mr Farage of standing in the way of Brexit by campaigning against Boris Johnson's deal. What have you got to say to Steve Baker and Jacob Rees-Mogg?
I just can't believe that people who campaigned so heavily against Mrs May's treaty, in the end, didn't just vote for it, but now are cheerleaders for it and suggest that anybody else with a different view shouldn't even stand in the elections. I just think the party has got arrogance written through the middle of it.
If it comes to it that the Brexit Party does split the Leave vote with the Tories and you end up being the man that lets Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street, how would you feel about that?
We won't split the Leave vote. We're the only people offering Leave. What Boris is offering is a Remain as Brexit. We're the only, at the moment, and that may change in the next 10 days, we're the only people offering Leave. And you know something? That's just as attractive to Labour voters as it is to Conservative voters. We saw back in 2015 when I did UKIP, we actually did Labour a lot more harm than we did the Conservatives.
Over the weekend, Mr Farage revealed that he won't be standing to be an MP himself after failing 7 times to win a seat in previous elections. Are you not standing to be an MP this time because you don't want to lose again?
No, because I don't want to be hunkered down in one constituency when there are 600 other constituencies with our candidates to go out and fight. So this is my last day in London for a long time. I'm out traversing the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, not just supporting our people, but also spreading the message, the extent to which Labour have betrayed the promises, and just how much Boris Johnson's Brexit deal is not Brexit.
Also vying for attention today were the Liberal Democrats, with their leader Jo Swinson calling on broadcasters to include her in any election TV debates and threatening legal action if they don't.
We are taking legal advice and we will pursue legal avenues if ITV do not change their format, because it is so important that millions of Remainers can make sure their voice is represented, that it is a fair debate between the different options on offer, and that for the girls and young women across our country, they see that women can be political leaders and prime ministers too.
As for the Conservatives, their campaign today was focused on a clock at party headquarters. Originally established to count down to the October 31st Brexit date, now it marks the time that has passed since that missed deadline and lays the blame with opposition parties. Labour, meanwhile, were trying to move the debate away from Brexit and back onto policy by meeting frontline NHS staff.
We've got hundreds of thousands of our members on the doorstep, and what they're finding is, yes, Brexit is raised on many occasions. We offer our Brexit solution, let the people decide, and that's going down pretty well. But also, most people are saying, all right, yes, Brexit, let's put that to one side. We know what you stand for. Let's talk about the real issues facing us. And I tell you, the real issues are facing people. What's happening in the NHS? What's happening in our local schools? Not seeing any police on the beat anymore.
Labour may not want a Brexit election, but Nigel Farage has other ideas.
Well, I could.
He may not be standing for Parliament, but when it comes to shaping the campaign so far, it is the Brexit Party that is being heard above the rest.
Our political correspondent Liz Bates. Now, earlier I sat down with the Shadow Chancellor, Labour's John McDonnell. I asked him how big a problem he thinks Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party will be for Labour itself in the coming election.
It's interesting because Nigel Farage seems to think he's going to impact upon the Labour vote. What we're finding on the doorsteps already, and since our campaign was launched, we've had hundreds of thousands of our members knocking on doors. What we've found already is, yeah, people are interested in Brexit, of course they are. Many of them welcome our solution to actually have another say, final decision, let the people decide. But the salience of other issues is coming through on the doorstep, and that's NHS, It's about not seeing a police officer on the beat in your street anymore, education, school cuts, etc. So all those other issues now, I think, are becoming the real issues of this campaign. And do you know what's coming back to? Yes, from young people, but also from other ages, climate change, the priority of climate change. That's our agenda, tackling climate change.
Well, you've come to the party late.
On what?
Climate change.
Not me. I launched...
No, the party.
Well, I've been arguing, Jeremy Corbyn and I launched a Green New Deal campaign over 10 years ago. Now, not
so many people heard.
Well, that's true. Not many people were listening then, but they are now, and Jeremy and I will deliver what's needed to tackle climate change and make us the leading edge country in the world in doing that.
Isn't your problem that coming down the track, like it or not, in the corporate sector, worldwide, there is trouble in store?
Yeah.
Aren't you writing cheques that you simply cannot afford?
No, that's exactly when you do need to invest. Every economic advisor will tell you when you're threatened in that way because what's happening globally, that's the time when you need to start investing in your economy.
But the problem is you're both writing cheques.
Well, I don't think we are, because the difference between us is, just like in the last election, I made it absolutely clear, these are our policies, this is how much it'll cost, and this is where the money will come from. And I was straight with people. I did tell them there will be increases in taxation. Increases in the top 5% in terms of income tax, reversal of some of the corporation tax cuts, financial transaction tax on the city, so the city pays its way, tackling tax evasion, tax avoidance. I was straight with people, and I will be in this election as well. Climate change is our #1 priority. How fast can we decarbonise our economy, get to net carbon zero in our economy? What investment does that require? And so you'll see on our manifesto, we've already debated some of this, is quite an intensive level of investment on solar, wind and wave power, on retrofitting homes to tackle the issues around insulation, and making sure our transport network in particular is decarbonised as much as it can.
But once again, huge amounts of money. Where on earth it's all going to come from? You talk about tax rises, but only for 5%.
Okay.
Surely the whole country is going to find itself having to pay if the kind of programme you have in store, either on climate change or anything else, they may want to, but you have to be candid with them.
I have been all the way through. If you remember in the last election and since then, I've been making it clear. We're putting forward a £500 billion programme of investment over 10 years. That money will be borrowed. We'll only borrow to invest. This weekend, we set out the level of investment we need to insulate people's homes, putting solar on 27 million homes, heat pumps, retrofitting insulation overall. £60 billion initial outlay, but you know that will be paid for as bills are reduced by at least £400 a year, and some of that money therefore in the reduced bills will be able to help individuals and others afford the outlay.
At least 2 referenda are contained in your programme, on Europe, on Brexit, and of course on Scottish independence, which you're now signed up to. Not the independence, but the referendum.
No, greatest respect,
I mean,
John.
that's going to be very disruptive.
No, greatest respect. We've said yes on Brexit. We'll negotiate a sensible deal, and then that will go back to the people and have the option of voting on a sensible deal or remain. We want to bring the country together. We believe let the people decide is the only way we can do that. In terms of the Scottish referendum, we've said to the Scottish Parliament, we oppose a referendum. We do not want a referendum. It's completely irrelevant.
But you're prepared to let them have one?
They're able to...
That's the latest, as I understand it.
Well, hang on. They're able, as the legislation now stands, to ask for one. We're saying to do that, they should have a proper mandate. And the next elections in Scotland could be one of those times they could get that mandate. Yeah. I actually think they won't get the mandate.
But if they do get the mandate, you would abide by it.
But we've also said to them, we're not interested in a referendum in our formative years. We've got enough to deal with regard to Brexit, austerity, etc. So it's not an issue for us, and certainly not a priority.
John McDonnell, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks a lot.
Well, welcome to Parliament, where MPs are whittling away at a short list of candidates to replace John Bercow as the Speaker of the House of Commons. They're currently on the 3rd round of voting. Mr Bercow's interventions into the Brexit process here have proved rather controversial for many, but his unique style has also raised the profile of the job, for better or worse. So who will replace him? Will they take a different tack? Our political correspondent Paul McNamara has been following the process.
It's a big seat to fill. Though some who line these benches will be hoping for a smaller personality from the next person who sits here.
Well, we're just about to hear the result from the Father of the House, Ken Clarke, right now.
Chris Bryant, 169. Sir Lindsay Hoyle, 267. Dame Eleanor Lang, 127. 2 ballot papers were spoiled. Those members with adequate mental arithmetic will know that no member received more than 50% of the ballots cast. Dame Eleanor Lang received the fewest votes and therefore leaves the contest. Now, again, before I confirm the candidates for the next ballot, I invite any or either candidate who wishes to withdraw to inform me in the chamber or to inform the clerk assistant in the reasons room within the next 10 minutes. And we must now await the 10 minutes.
Well, Ken Clarke there saying that no candidate has got the more than half the votes required. Lindsay Hoyle, the Labour MP, who is the current favourite, 267 votes. Eleanor Lang, the Conservative candidate, 127. She's out of the contest. So let's now return to Paul McNamara and his process. He's been following the process today.
It's a big seat to fill. Though some who line these benches will be hoping for a smaller personality from the next person who sits here.
If you don't like it, you're perfectly entitled to your view. I couldn't give a flying flamingo what your view is.
Parliament filled today for one last election before it empties for, well, the election. Each candidate made their pitch for Speaker of the House. Each pitch rather similar. Essentially, I'll do it different to the last guy.
I'm not a grandstanding politician, Mr. Clarke. I would speak little.
The Speaker should be a dignified and quiet voice.
It's not the role of the Speaker to say any more than needs to be said.
It isn't just about the backbenchers, it's about a Speaker that endorses and supports the backbenchers.
Somebody who is completely impartial, who knows Erskine May inside out and back to front. I've got it lying by my bedside.
We can't go on with huge decisions being made by one person behind closed doors.
A Speaker from the North, so the public see Parliament is about the whole country and not just London. And the last woman from the North did a pretty good job.
That last woman from the North was also the first and as yet only female Speaker. This was Baroness Boothroyd on her first day back in 1992. She says a lot has changed since then. So what are you hoping from the next Speaker?
I hope there will be a calmer period in the House, that it will be more, I don't say friendly, but more of a workplace rather than a bitterness. I find there was a lot of bitterness in the last few years, which I didn't like. And I hope it will be calmer, more dignified, and more approachable in a way.
John Bercow was ceremoniously dragged to the seat in 2009. By the time he stood down, many would gladly have dragged him from it. Seen by some as having moved from merely umpiring Commons to a Speaker steering the game. You've been an MP for 36 years. How have you seen the role change?
I think the one that has kept the executive more in check is Bercow. At one level he's been very good. You know, the use of an urgent question. You rarely got urgent debates. Even during things like the miners' strike, we rarely got urgent debates. He's been a lot different. On the other hand, he's not been as even-handed, in my personal view.
Finding a replacement, though, is not a quick task. A few rounds of voting, and some candidates didn't make it past round one.
It's better to try and to fail than not to try at all.
So you're happy with how it's all gone then?
Well, it would have been nice to have got a few more votes, but, you know, everybody's been quite complimentary about what I said this afternoon. I didn't disgrace myself.
Tomorrow, this House will empty for a general election. When it returns, it won't just be with new faces on the benches, but a new one in the seat that governs it.
Well, we'll return to the result when we have it. It's now a contest between two Labour MPs, Lindsay Hoyle and Chris Bryant. Now some other Westminster news. Police investigating the deaths of 39 migrants have arrested 8 people in Vietnam on suspicion of people smuggling. It's thought most of the people found in the back of a lorry trailer in Essex last month were Vietnamese. It comes as a committee of MPs told the government this case should serve as a wake-up call over immigration policy. A new report warns that the current focus on closing borders serves to drive migrants to take more dangerous routes and pushes them into the hands of criminal groups. Well, that report was written by the Foreign Affairs Committee, and joining me now is Tom Tugendhat, Conservative MP and chair of that committee. So you want more relaxed immigration and asylum rules, effectively?
No, what we want is we want proper routes for migrants who have a legal case for it. So
doesn't that mean relaxing the rules, though?
No, it doesn't. What it means is making sure that people don't have to risk their lives in order to become migrants, and to know that they can't achieve an irregular migration route, as it's called, as in an illegal route, but instead what they can do is they can apply for migrant status if they have a legal case nearer to their point of departure, sometimes in the country of departure, but sometimes in perhaps a refugee camp in one of the neighbouring states.
A lot of people voted for Brexit in the belief that they could take back control of immigration, and that to them meant reducing immigration levels. You're not so sure that's the right policy?
And what I'm saying is that that's exactly what we should do. We should take back control of migration, and the way you take back control of migration is you make sure that those who come have a legal case to come, have a genuine fear of persecution, and have a very real reason to be in the United Kingdom. And the way you do that is not by empowering people smugglers and seeing people die in the Sahara or in the Mediterranean, or indeed in shipping containers in Essex, but by making sure that the British government is connected to partners around the world, some in Europe, yes, of course, but some in sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa, to offer lawful means for these migrants to get to the UK if they have a real cause.
But that means taking a fair share of asylum seekers and migrants, which might mean asylum seekers and migrants increasing in number in the UK.
It means applying the rules. That's what it means fundamentally. It means...
Are you being honest with the British public about what it really does mean in
Cathy,
terms of numbers?
I'm being incredibly honest with the British public. I'm saying apply the rules. I couldn't be simpler than that. Apply the rules. And if you have a lawful case for migration, and by the way, we've seen this work really well out of places like Lebanon, where the British government has done amazingly well in making sure that those who are the most vulnerable in society, those who are most in need, have been the ones who have been brought to the United Kingdom. The British government and the British people have been unbelievably generous to the folk who've been forced out of their homes in Syria because of the civil war, and have found themselves in refugee camps in Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey. And instead of taking the youngest, the fittest, the strongest, what we've done is we've done the right thing. We've taken those who are most in need of help and those who have the strongest claim for migration. And that's what we're calling on the government to do more of.
Let me ask you about another issue now. Downing Street's reportedly blocked the release of a report from the Intelligence and Security Committee on Russian meddling in the EU referendum. Do you think the chair of that committee, Dominic Grieve, should go ahead and publish anyway?
Well, I think that this is a report that we need to read. I think this is an extremely important report, and it should be read as soon as possible. I would like it to be published tomorrow. As you know, tomorrow is the last day that Parliament is sitting, and I really urge the government to change their mind on this and to publish it.
Can Dominic Grieve, the chairman of that committee, publish without breaking the Official Secrets Act, or does he need Downing Street's permission?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not the legal expert on this, so my understanding is that parliamentary papers can be published according to the 1840 Act by will of Parliament and not will of government. So my understanding is that he could, but I may be wrong on that because the Intelligence and Security Committee is raised under a different status than other select committees of the House.
He's accused Number 10 of telling, quote, whopping untruths over this. Do you think that is the case?
Well, he's been in contact with Number 10 and I haven't, so I'm afraid I'll leave him to speak for himself. But I still think that this report should be published as soon as possible. I think it's important that we know, and this is one of the reports that we've got coming out, our last report coming out tomorrow, is on how autocracies deal with democracies and how democracies must face the real threat that is posed. And this is another example. We've seen it in academia. Many people have reported about it, including the Sunday Times over the last 2 weekends, about how the Chinese state has been interfering in academic freedoms in the UK, and we should see this in democratic freedoms from Russia as well.
So should your party hand back the many thousands of pounds of donations it's received from Russian donors?
Well, I think we should make sure that all donations are lawful, and I think that's exactly what the party... Well, that's exactly what the party's got a responsibility to do. You know, there are legal migrants into the UK from many different countries around the world. And so if people are British citizens, lawfully in the UK as citizens, they pay tax here, they have a lawful right to be involved in political action.
Let's return to our top story now, and the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Jo Swinson, says her party will launch legal action if ITV does not include her in its televised leaders' debate. At the moment, it will only feature Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. And Jo Swinson joins me now. You've said this is sexist, this decision to exclude you. Is it a reality that it's not sexism, it's realism, that the two main credible candidates for Prime Minister are the ones who should get the scrutiny in a head-to-head debate?
I'm a candidate to be Prime Minister of this country. And if
you're a candidate, but you're not going to get there, are you?
Well, that's not up to you or to any other journalist. That's up to the voters of this country.
It would take a miracle, though, wouldn't it?
We're in a very volatile time in politics, and I just say to political journalists, are there any predictions that you've made in the last few years that have been spectacularly wrong? Many people didn't think Jeremy Corbyn would become leader of the Labour Party or that Donald Trump would become president. Back in the 2015 election, we saw the SNP go from 6 to 56 MPs in Scotland. So we've not been a stranger to political surprises.
OK, but the polling average, Conservatives 37%, Labour 27%, Lib Dems 17%, and put that together with the electoral system, which I know you've railed against, it would take a miracle to put you into number 10, wouldn't it?
Well, it's absolutely possible. And if you look at those polling averages, then actually very similar to where we were polling before the 2010 election, and in fact closer to the other parties. And yet in 2010, we had leadership debates that were three-way debates between David Cameron, Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg, three men. And when it comes to a similar polling situation, then suddenly when it's Boris Johnson, Jeremy Corbyn, then I'm to be excluded.
Now, as a boys' club.
Well, I mean, I think it's an establishment stitch-up. I think those two have got together and they've said, look, we'd just rather debate each other and pretend that it's just something that we get to decide. It's not a proper debate because it's leave against leave. Both Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn want to deliver Brexit.
Jeremy Corbyn is not, you can't say he's a leave supporter. I mean, you might have doubts about how much of a Remainer he is, but his policy is to negotiate a deal and put that versus Remain to the electorate.
And you'll be very well aware that he has been asked time and time and time again how he would vote in a referendum on a Brexit deal versus remaining in the EU, and he does not answer that question. So we cannot trust that he would be Remain. They both want to deliver a Brexit deal, and we cannot have a situation where in such a crucial election, which is about determining the future of our country and our relationship with the EU, we're having this election because of the Brexit impasse. You cannot have the voice of Remainers being silenced in that debate.
Okay, so Sky has invited you to a three-way debate. Make the case to the other two blokes as to why you should be involved, and also make the case to my bosses about why they should invite you.
We are having an election which is about the biggest issue at stake, the future of our country, who we are, what is our relationship with the rest of the European Union. Millions of people in this country want to remain. 6 million people signed a petition to revoke Article 50. Hundreds of thousands of people were marching on the streets because they want to stop Brexit. The Liberal Democrats are the biggest, strongest party of Remain. We are fighting to stop Brexit and we need to be in those debates. It is 2019. A debate between two chaps chatting about how they're going to leave the EU doesn't cut it.
This morning you were sent a suspicious package containing white powder. Your office got this parcel. Do you fear for your safety in this campaign? Do you fear for the safety of your staff?
Well, we all have to take security incredibly seriously. I will not be bullied. I am standing up for what I believe in, and that is important in our democracy.
Are you fearful?
But I look at my young members of staff, in their early 20s, who had to open that parcel, and at that time they didn't know whether that powder was harmful or otherwise. They should never be in that position. People who are working in politics, I think there are questions to be asked about what has happened here, certainly. I mean, the emergency services, the police have been very prompt in their response, and that is, I thank them for that. But these, young staffers working in politics, we all disagree about different issues and about what we want for the future of our country. But nobody should be placed in that situation where they feel that their personal safety is at risk. Whether that's elected, of course. I mean, that of course is going to shake anyone up when that happens, and then the police come in and everything's locked down and they're sweeping for fingerprints and DNA evidence. So, I want us to have a politics where we can have healthy, vibrant debate, where we can disagree and disagree well without any of these threats and extreme challenges where people fear for their safety.
Jo Swinson, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, the Conservative Party says it will stand behind its candidate in a key marginal seat in South Wales. Francesca O'Brien was selected to run for the constituency of Gower, but she's facing calls to stand down after comments on a personal social media account 5 years ago emerged yesterday. Andy Davies is in the village of Mumbles in the constituency. Andy.
This is a story which emerged yesterday evening in the Guardian newspaper involving the new Conservative candidate for Gower, a key target seat for the Tories in Wales after they lost it to Labour in the last general election.
We've been out knocking doors this morning in Gorsigning. The response has been really positive here.
Her name is Francesca O'Brien, and what's caused outrage are comments that she made online back in 2014 while watching, it seems, an episode of the Channel 4 reality programme Benefit Street, itself a controversial programme which was following the lives of some residents of a Birmingham street who were in receipt of welfare payments. And at one point on Facebook, Francesca O'Brien wrote the following: "Benefit Street, anyone else watching this? Wow. These people are unreal." And she then went on to say this: "My blood is boiling. These people need putting down." Now, those posts have since been deleted, and Ms O'Brien has since apologised, since the story broke, has apologised, saying her comments were off the cuff and the use of language unacceptable. But of course, this has generated widespread condemnation. The Labour Party have called her comments absolutely disgraceful. The Lib Dems have said they're hateful. And the local Plaid Cymru candidate here has invited Francesca O'Brien to join him on a soup run to, quote, see how real people's lives are affected by Tory cuts. And going into an election period now, you know that these comments are going to be seized upon by political opponents time and again.
So, Andy, what have the Conservatives said?
Well, I was speaking to the chairman of the Welsh Conservatives, Lord Davis, himself a former MP here. He said that he didn't condone the comments, but when I asked him whether Francesca O'Brien should still be standing as a candidate, he said that she had his support. So, for the time being, it seems, the Tories are standing by her.
Well, elsewhere in Wales, Plaid Cymru launched their election campaign today, so tell us about that.
Well, there's been a great deal of interest right now about whether the Welsh nationalists, Plaid Cymru, who've asked for a second referendum, whether they are going to enter into electoral pacts with other pro-Remain parties, much as they did in the recent by-election in Brecon and Radnorshire, which was won by the Lib Dems. We haven't got a definitive answer on that yet. We're told today that discussions are continuing, but for Plaid today, it was all about launching their general election campaign, setting out their vision for a Wales which they claimed had been repeatedly failed by the main Westminster parties.
Let's use this election to put Wales's needs on the political agenda like never before. And we do that by electing the greatest number of Wales's party's MPs, Plaid Cymru MPs, ever in our history, so that whoever's in Downing Street on the 13th of December, they've got to sit up and listen and take Wales seriously.
Now, Plaid Cymru did very well in the European elections, polling second in Wales. The big challenge for them is to see whether they can convert that apparent surge into votes at the general election and improve upon the 4 parliamentary seats that they now have.